Welcome once again to Syntax Error, your pretentious philosophical pedantic podcast ostensibly about video gaming and related topics therein. Warning, this podcast contains mature language, content, and spoilers. You have been warned. Welcome to Syntax Error. Today, we have a special interview with Jukka Laakso, co-founder and CEO of indie developer Rival Games Ltd, based in Turku, Finland. Founded in March 2013, Rival has recently released their second episode in their series entitled The Detail, a narratively focused story-driven game done in a graphic novel style, centering on a criminal investigation in a noir-flavored modern city. The Detail is available through Steam. Alright, welcome everyone to Syntax Error. Today we're here with Jukka Laakso. He is the CEO and co-founder of Rival Games Ltd. They have just released a second episode of their game called The Detail, and we're going to be talking to him a bit about it and also about running a studio in general. So first off, Jukka, we'd like to ask you, sort of give us your history. What got you into video games?
Sure, yeah. I think my history is kind of a boring one. I've been a student for a long time in the local university, and just gaming is something that I've had a passion for a long time, since I'm a long-time gamer myself, and I'm also kind of a creative person, so when I saw the opportunity to go full-time in gaming as a professional, it was like a no-brainer for me.
Sure, yeah, of course. I kind of agree with that. Sort of a dream job for me as well, in a sense, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
So, so you said you were a student. What else? What were your pursuits before you got into it? Were there other things that influenced you, or things you were doing beforehand, but video gaming sort of overtook them?
Yeah, I think it was mostly school. I've got a degree as a Master of Science in Technology, so that kind of more or less was a full-time job.
Right.
And I finished my studies just last December. They were kind of strolling there on the background.
Right.
I was working on the company, but then I ran into the deadline for the studies, and I just had to finish them. So.
Right. So Rival formed in March 2013, correct?
Yes.
That's when it was started. So we want to ask you, we talk a little bit about running an indie development studio like this. What are some of the struggles you faced? How's your team dynamic work? Or talk a little bit about that for us.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I think what makes us, first of all, kind of unique when it comes to indie studios is basically usually when you look at gaming studios, they've got the basic pairing of a coder and an artist.
Right, yeah.
But when you look at us, we know that narrative is our core business, and that's where we focus our team strength. Right now we've got 13, 14 guys, just kind of depending on a daily basis. But we've got writers, about 4 of them. We've got our own audio designer and a musician.
That's right.
We've got only 2 coders, and the rest are pretty much graphic artists. And then there's me, who just does a lot of different stuff.
Sort of the jack of all trades there, handling everything. That's very interesting, because that actually sort of segues nicely to. So Syntax Error focuses mostly on narrative, which is sort of something we don't do reviews necessarily. We like to break down the narrative and focus on those aspects. So having said what you just said, can you explore a little bit further about the creative process? Like you said, you have a whole team of writers and only 2 coders. What's the process like when you're writing a game?
Yeah, I think it's it's more like a collaborative process. Basically, we always have a lead writer for the project, because you need to have the one guy with the vision, one guy who knows it back to front, everything we do. But rest of it, it's just they sit in the same room, they come up first with the major plot lines, and then they start breaking it from a scene to scene and work their way from the top down. Yeah, that's sort of so you answered my question. We were wondering about how that works, where is it one singular vision and then you have a team underneath that, sort of filling it all out, fleshing it out, etc. Sort of writing a basic script and then branching off from that, figuring out what paths you want to take, which ones may not be necessarily useful in a certain narrative or an arc or so forth. Yeah, absolutely. It's like that. We trust our lead writers, but we also know that they come up with stupid ideas. So we need to have the team there challenging them constantly. Right, you need to have people reining each other in, I would imagine. Yeah, definitely. Excellent. So we played through episode 1 and 2 of The Detail, and you're on the site itself, you guys purport that you're influenced by The Wire, which I saw. It was a clear influence, of course. But we're wondering, we noticed a couple of references, one of the achievements was a Silence of the Lambs reference, Quid Pro Quo, he has the Hannibal Lecter mask on. So can you tell us a little about your other influences that may have gone into The Detail? Yeah, I think it's just the traditional ones like the homicide, the corner, or the shield. They're like the
Yes.
obvious ones. But also, there's a lot of like influence from the Nordic crime fiction. It's kind of like similar. It has like the noir idea of a imperfect protagonist.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Nordic characters tend to be more internalized and kind of sad ones compared to the American ones. So it's kind of a sweet spot between the traditional American cop and then the Nordic ones.
That's interesting. Could you tell us a little more about that? Like, can you give some examples of Nordic detective fiction that our audience may not have been familiar with?
I think if you're familiar, well, everyone's familiar with the Netflix. They've got the series called The Killing.
Okay.
It's based on a Danish crime series. It kind of is pretty much close to the Nordic way of doing like crime drama.
Nordic view. All right, that's interesting. Yeah, that's cool. So, speaking of characters and sort of balancing the protagonists between those two aspects, we noticed that it seemed that you wanted to have a very sort of gray morality area with the detail. Exploring various facets of, trying to be a upstanding person, a good police officer, but also facing situations that aren't quite as cut and dry. So, given that, were there any actual real-world events aside from the novels and so forth and the television shows that inspired some of the things that went into the detail?
Well, of course, it's all fiction, but still, if you look at like the headlines nowadays,
yes, exactly.
Like, police brutality, that's a big thing, and that's something we want to bring in, but we don't want to be too preachy about it.
Right. I think I have to say I think you did that well. Like it was like you had that integrated into the story, but it wasn't ham-fisted, if you will. It wasn't in your face, but certainly it's an aspect of that. And I thought it was interesting that you tried to weave it in and out and have it be more nuanced, if you will, in that sense.
Thank you.
So I like that. So speaking of that, the police brutality versus the humanity of those who are in the force, I thought that was interestingly explored as well because a little quick thing. This game is it's Telltale style, if you will, right? So
yeah.
you make various moral decisions. You're confronted with choices that you make, and some of them are mutually exclusive. So therefore, you'll see the ramifications of those choices in later episodes. So is that something that you guys wanted to focus on heavily? Try to if you choose one, and then it'll affect decisions and other actions later down the line in the narrative as the episodes are released.
I think that like the branching narrative, that was the core from the beginning. We knew that is the game mechanic.
Right.
And if we look at Telltale games, for example, it's when we look at the choices they offer, it's, if we want to put it like bluntly, it's either what color hat you're gonna wear or who's gonna die next.
Yeah, that's funny. That's interesting.
You want to bring something that between those two choices, like the everyday life choices, more or less. Of course, they're a little bit like over the edge, so to speak, but still. So that's like our core idea for design.
Yeah, that's interesting.
When it comes to choices.
And another thing I want to talk about, I was very impressed with you said outright, your website says that you're doing it in a graphic novel style. This may have been one of the games that was the most graphic novel like I've ever seen, and that's something interesting that I thought like you don't see that every day. So can you tell us a little more about like what the process of like doing the artwork and like having it matched, having the panels, if you will, they basically look like panels. As you go through, another panel will come up. It'll be like a fight scene will be like pow. We want to ask you a little bit more about that. Like how does that come together when you're combining it with the narrative?
Yeah. First of all, I think I've personally been a huge fan of graphic novels for a long time, like Alan Moore, Frank Miller, of course.
I would say it shows. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and then when you look at like basic like cost structure when it comes to games, cinematics, they're expensive. They really cost a lot, and we knew that we didn't have the resources to do them, so we had to come up with an alternative way on like telling the story forward. And I think like the graphic novel style was something that it just came up.
So it was natural, maybe?
Yeah, it was pretty much natural. It was basically, of course, when you first make the story, you come up with the visual script for it. And that's not far away from the like graphic novel style.
True,
after all.
It's interesting. Yeah, I just noticed that, and like I said, it's something you don't see every day. But I thought I have to say it matched very well, and I want to see more games like it. I'm waiting for the third episode. Can't wait. So
yeah, I think we have still a lot to learn on it. but we're getting better.
Yeah.
I think the second episode is, for example, it's a huge leap from the first one when it comes to storytelling through the graphic narrative.
So, speaking of that, I don't know if you want to tell us this or if you can, but do you have a release date for episode 3?
Not yet. We've got something else that we're working on at the moment.
Yes.
It's taking a little bit of our time.
Is it a side patch? I know, I think you're not quite at liberty to mention it yet, but is that correct? It's sort of under wraps. It can't be announced quite yet.
Yeah. It's something that we've been working for a long time, just partnering up with some interesting comic IPs from the States. So.
All right, sounds intriguing. You got me. So another thing we want to ask you about is now the details available through Steam, and want to ask your experience. Like, what was it like working with Steam? What was it like being, having the greenlight process, and how was that working with that? How was that for you?
Yeah, I think Steam has been an extremely interesting experience for us. If you look at there's a lot of games that get launched these days, but it's nothing compared to the App Store, for example. And there's still a chance that you get discovered, even though you don't have a huge marketing budget or anything. And so far, every tool that we've used, like implementing the achievements, everything like Steam has to offer, it's pretty straightforward, easy process. So there's nothing to complain about on that front. But however, if you look at nowadays, they just launched the new refund program for Xbox. That hasn't been the best for us thus far. It hasn't been bad. The refund percent isn't that big. But when you look at the feedback that the players are giving why they refunded your game, it's like, yeah, I played it, I finished it, didn't please refund. Yeah. It's like, you can't go to the movie, watch the movie, and
be like, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was trying to get at. That's interesting. It's kind of a weird thing. Like, there's no equivalent to that in another medium, but I just want, trying to get to how that functions when releasing via that, because you can say, even if you like the game, you can still get your money back. It's weird, but
I think they're still searching the right way to do that.
Yeah. So it's sort of like a testing, but we were just curious about that. So, given that, how about you tell us a little bit some of your classic favorite games that may have influenced, if not the detail, just your gaming style in general?
Yeah, sure. I think right now my favorite games might be a little bit outdated since I'm running the studio and I've got a 9-month-old daughter, so they kind of take my free time.
Fair enough, yeah.
But pretty much, I would say that my all-time favorite are the 2 first Fallout games.
Oh, nice.
Just the atmosphere and the freedom they offered. I haven't seen anything like that.
I 100% agree. Just real quickly, I know you can't see it. If I could, I'm wearing a Fallout shirt right now, so I'm 100% with you.
And then, of course, I enjoyed the Mass Effect series a lot.
Yes,
and kind of a much more limited narrative, but still works.
Yeah. Sure.
And then Telltale's The Walking Dead, that was a huge inspiration for us, even though we came up with the idea for the detail before they launched the first episode. Sure. But after that, it was easy just to sell it to people, tell us what we're doing, since the short pitch for the detail is that it's where HBO's The Wire meets Telltale Games The Walking Dead. So everybody understands that.
Yeah, exactly. It says what it says. But speaking of that, that's interesting. I want to explore that a little bit, if I may. It seems like Telltale-ish games, episodic narrative games like this, sort of are coming to the forefront, or there's certainly more of them now than there have been in the past. Do you think that's sort of a trend in the industry, or is it because that people want something new or something fresh, or as you said, taking The Wire but meets a Walking Dead style game?
Yeah, I think you can't say it's a new business model, since Telltale has been doing it since 2004, sure. I think. But with The Walking Dead, they really hit it off. They got it 100% right for the first time. But still, right now, everyone's doing it with exactly the same format.
Yes.
It's like a 2-hour-long episode,
so it seems,
close to 2 hours. And I see that there's a lot of potential to innovate on that area, especially on the business side. Should the episode last only half an hour, but come on a weekly basis? Or what's the right model? That's something.
Right. What's the ratio of that?
Yeah, we've been thinking a lot about that. It's completely different if you look at Steam. Steam's easy because people tend to buy the games up front, and they're not too picky. But when it comes to mobile, having a 90-minute long episode, that's too long, probably.
That's interesting. That's right.
So that's something we've been thinking about. What if we cut it to smaller pieces? But then, of course, there comes the narrative form. That when you cut the game too short, really nothing happens in the game, and people won't play the next episode. So
exactly, it would it breaks the flow of the story, I would think, in a way that you don't want. Even though it seems like you're sort of forced to cut it up because of the nature of the platform, because it's mobile. But then it doesn't sort of match your original vision really, and
absolutely. But that's something that we want to test with in the future, because there's a lot of room for testing.
So is that sort of the next aspect we're working on, testing like how to cut it up or how to divide it up if it's going to be released on mobile?
I think that's something that we think when we start designing the story. That can we cut it up? Can we make it longer, perhaps shorter, whatever? Is it possible? But still, because narrative is our basic business model.
Right.
If the narrative doesn't work, it's not worth doing. So.
For sure. I don't. I've never thought about it. I guess I'll just be honest. I'm not that big of a mobile gamer. I'm definitely like more console PC.
Yeah, well,
of course.
I'm neither. So.
Fair enough. But as you just spoke to, it seems like it's more prevalent now, or at least you sort of have to account for that. It seems when you go into a writing session, say, okay, yes, we want this story, but now we know that we may have to cut it off here, or sort of move one part perhaps that we wanted to have later now to be getting to sort of. Keep people interested if they're playing it on a mobile platform.
Yeah. I think there's so many games coming out on the mobile. So if you have 2 months between each episode, they're gonna forget about you.
Yeah, true, exactly. People, they need to be kept fed, if you will, frequently.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting. So, all right, I'll bring it back to something we touched upon earlier. We said about sort of the themes contained in the detail. As influenced by The Wire and so forth. Do you think that nowadays people are more accepting of those kinds of darker, more nuanced themes in games as versus maybe even 5-10 years ago? Is it easier to include those kinds of things and reach an audience?
Good question. I think that depends a lot, first of all, on the execution, how you bring them to the audience. Because if we look back to the games, one of my all-time favorites is the Westwood's Blade Runner.
Okay, yeah.
That was kind of a really grim story and kind of a branching narrative as well. So it kind of did it already. It found the audience, but I think then the trend died in the early 2000s. But now it's lifting its head again, I think mostly due to Telltale.
Yeah.
And if you look at TV series, the span of different various dramas, either in crime or anything else, that's huge. So we know that there probably is a huge audience.
There's a market for
kind
it.
of yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I just thought that, it's interesting because as you just said, you sort of saw a return, or it sort of came back to the forefront, but in a slightly different way. So I don't know. I found that quite interesting.
Yeah, well, that's usually the tradition of the gaming industry. It goes in cycles.
Right.
So.
True. So it seems to be the cycle that's coming now is apparently this one, And I'm all for it. I'm being interested in narrative. It's great to me. So I love to see more of them. Speaking of that, another quick thing we'd like to go to is when you're designing a game. It's sort of a loaded question. But I'll phrase it as such. What do you think is the most important element in developing an effective atmosphere for a game like this, or just any game, but specifically the detail?
I actually thought a lot about that question earlier. I think it's the overall audiovisual experience, that you design every piece of the work in cooperation with the next. So the audio needs to match what happens on the screen. And I know that we're not quite there yet, but we're doing better with each episode. So kind of how we started to design the atmosphere for the detail, it was just look at the basic elements of noir.
Right. Yes, I was going to say.
And build it up from there.
It was very noir influenced, which I always I'm sort of a sucker for that. It's one of my favorite aesthetics. And as soon as I'm they're going for a noir atmosphere, I'm sort of automatically going to enjoy it more. But I thought it was pulled off very well. And as you mentioned, the soundtrack, I thought it matched it because it was minimalist, but it still kept up the atmosphere it was there, but it wasn't intrusive, if you will.
Yeah, I think the soundtrack has been one of the biggest issues with gamers. It's 50-50.
Yeah.
Some people just say that there's no soundtrack, it sucks, and the other half loves it. So
I'm going to say I'm in the half who loves it, but it's interesting because if it was not there, you would definitely notice it. People, maybe the average gamer audience, maybe you can speak to this, but may not pay attention to the soundtrack as much. But if it's good, it will elevate a game. Certainly, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite indie games, Hotline Miami.
Oh yeah,
that wouldn't be anything without the soundtrack.
I am completely with you. It has an amazing soundtrack. It's a fine game, but how much it is elevated for having such a crazy and amazing soundtrack. I agree with that.
Absolutely.
It's interesting to me because it seems that it's a part of a game that isn't often pointed to as something that can change it or elevate it again, as I said, but it certainly is an integral part of it. I would think. So I want to get your thoughts on it, or you guys focus on that as well.
Yeah, and I think that for us, the soundtrack, we've been thinking a lot how to implement it, what to do, because we know that we don't have voiceovers. Yes. That's another thing that players keep reminding us that get voiceovers, and we know that with our budget, there's two ways to do the voiceovers. Either they suck or they work, and with our budget, the probability on it being the first is pretty big, so that's why we didn't want to do those.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Then you have to get the music to match the voiceovers, kind of fill in the void that they create.
True, yeah. So that's interesting. You're right. That's something as a wannabe game developer, sort of. I was always fascinated by the process of that. If you're going to have a voice actor, does your budget allow that? And if it doesn't, then what do you do to, sort of alleviate it or have something else instead? So I thought it was interesting. I just wanted to talk to you a bit about that.
Yeah, the graphic novel approach helped a lot.
Yes.
There's no voiceovers in graphic novels, so it's kind of an easy step.
Exactly. I absolutely agree with that. I think it adds to the effect so much more. I have to say this real quickly personally. I like clicking the next page and then the page flips. That's an excellent touch, and it's it's something you don't see every day, but perhaps it's something you consciously integrated that to create the feel and keep the feel of having that in the game, as if you were going through a graphic novel almost. It feels to me as if you're playing a graphic novel. So in that sense, I think it's excellently done. It looks really cool, and when the panels slide over, I thought that's a very nice touch. Versus as you said, if you can't have voiceover, what are you going to do instead? And I thought that was quite effective. So I'll just give you a compliment on it.
Yeah, thanks.
So, I think kind of wrapping it up. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or anything else you'd like to discuss at the end here?
I think we covered the topics very well. So
yes, I believe you some fascinating information from an industry insider, if you will, that we don't often get to hear a perspective from. So, if nothing else, I think we'll sign off. Well, thank you again for joining us, and
my pleasure.
Yep, the detail is available right now, episodes 1 and 2. So check it out, and we've been talking with Jukka Laakso from Wyvern Games, and we'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.
This has been Syntax Error. Thank you as always for listening, and we will see you next time. Music by Stephen Hermosi, editing and engineering by Chris Morgan. Syntax Error is part of a Lost Signals Productions, all rights reserved.